Welcome to Nevada Newsmakers. On the program today, he may not print the money, but he prints just about everything else for the federal government. And who are the most neglected group of kids in the school system? The answer may surprise you. Scott Craigie has the rundown.
Well, Bruce James is in the studio today. He's been working at Washington, D.C. with President Bush, but he's coming home thinking about working for a higher authority. There's a lot of talk, people trying to get him to run for office on his own. And also, Barbara Scheible is here today. She works with the PTA for gifted children, the parents of gifted children. And she believes and makes a pretty good case that they're not getting what they ought to out of the public school district. And also, Sam, you got a wild bunch here today for the pundit panel. How are you going to keep control of this group?
You're thinking I ever had control? On the Power Pundit panel today, Liz MacMenamin, Daryl, Capurro, and Paul Mozen. It's all coming up next on an all-new Nevada Newsmakers.
Nevada Newsmakers, brought to you in part by the Tahoe Reno Industrial Center, the world's largest industrial park, the resort at Red Hawk, and the Peppermill family of casinos.
High-tech companies demand perfect world amenities. They require clean, reliable power, state-of-the-art fiber optic communication, and clean water sources. In a perfect world, companies would have immediate access to rail and interstate freeways. There would be 4-lane expressways that shorten shipping times and provide convenient commute routes for valued employees. Well, the future is now, and it's here. Welcome to the Tahoe Reno Industrial Center, the largest industrial park in the world, building economic prosperity for Nevada.
When making your decision as where to play golf, consider the resort at Red Hawk. You know you have made the right choice the moment you arrive. The friendly staff welcomes you to our award-winning pro shop. You know you've made the right decision on the first tee. The Lakes course is in the best condition in years. You know you've made the right choice after you've played 18 holes. The resort at Red Hawk, the right choice.
Nevada Newsmakers is sponsored in part by the Nevada Beer Wholesalers Association.
As an employer, did you know you can be held liable for negligent hiring? A background screening by Employer Links can uncover criminal records, like alcohol and drug convictions. It can verify the applicant's education, driving records, and professional licenses. Employer Links can check civil records, registered sex offender records, and Social Security fraud. Hiring the right person shouldn't be a gamble. Call Employer Links. Employer Links, protecting your investment.
I tell you, John, this industry has really changed.
Tell me about it.
You seemed to do pretty well last year. What's your secret?
No secrets. Although I'll tell you something. The smartest thing I did was sign up with Pro Group Management.
Really? They do workers' comp, right?
Yeah, their services are great. And get this, they saved me 30%. I've heard they saved others 50%.
That works for me.
Pro Group Management. Finally, workers' comp that works for you.
And now, back to Nevada Newsmakers with Sam Shad.
And we welcome to the program Bruce James, who is the public printer of the United States. It's almost 3 years. In November, it'll be 3 years since you took this job. What has been the transformation of this agency from, I guess, the last major change was, what, 1895?
You know, I think 1895 is about it. It's interesting that we have been hit by one of the most disruptive technologies that this country has seen in its entire history with the introduction of the Internet. And, a truly disruptive technology changes the way people do things. And
Why do you call it disruptive?
Because it disrupts everything. It disrupts all patterns. And you have to figure out new ways of doing things. And, when one of these technologies hits, you don't instantly recognize it's there. Certainly in the early 1990s, no one would have expected the impact the Internet has had on the way we communicate with each other, the way we find information, the way we use information. And so the government wasn't prepared for this either. And it's the job of the government printing office to gather all the documents of government, everything that the government publishes, and make certain that that information is available to members of the public. And we do it, and have traditionally done it through a series of depository libraries. These are 1,300 libraries throughout the United States that we have partnerships with. We furnish material to them for free. In turn, they catalog that material and make it available to the public. 53 of those libraries also are charged with the responsibility of maintaining that information in perpetuity, which we've discovered is a long time.
Right.
And it's the transition from paper to electronic documents that has been the most interesting challenge that I've faced. And the first thing we had to figure out how to do was how to authenticate documents that you were downloading from the internet or people were downloading from a government site. We have developed a method for doing that, which we're testing right now, and we expect within a year that it'll be in full force, so that you know when you download a document that it is the document the author created. The second challenge is how the heck do you save this stuff in perpetuity, because we all have horror stories of documents that we digitally recorded 10 years ago that now we have no device to read them with. And so we've had to take a look at a scheme that would allow us to keep the data separate from the delivery mechanisms. And we've developed such a scheme, and the specifications for it are now published on our website, and we'll be working over the next 3 years to build a system which will do that.
Do you see a point where the printer's office will someday be paperless?
Well, in my lifetime, certainly that we will have some paper, but last month we estimate that 50% of all government documents were born digital and published to the web. Will never be printed by the U.S. government. So we see that trend. That's up from 0 10 years ago. So you see a trend progressing forward. And what we're working with our library partners on now is a determination of what documents we do want to keep in print. And certainly the Congressional Record, the Federal Register, the Statistical Abstract of the United States, and other important documents, we don't want to inadvertently let those go. So we think we'll end up with, perhaps between 50 and 100 titles that we will want to keep in print basically forever.
Do you see... Oh, go ahead, Sam.
I was just going to ask, it seems, in my business, for example, that even though we use the internet to the absolute maximum in communication, but we still print an awful lot of things.
Sure.
Do you see that in your office as well?
Well, let me tell you how this works. One of the publications that we do is the Federal Register. It's about, an inch thick each day, and has, someplace between 200 and 300, sometimes 400 pages in it every day. It's just chock full of information, from executive orders coming out of the White House to correspondence the President has, to executive agencies promulgating regulations. And we used to have, 10 years ago, we had 35,000 paid subscribers to that daily publication. Today we have fewer than 2,000 paid subscribers because it's online. Well, nobody read that document cover to cover. They were looking for a particular piece of information. And my guess is when they find that, they print it out. But they print out 2 or 3 pages,
right,
not 200 or 300 pages. And so that's the big change that we've seen. While office copying may be going up, certainly the number of pages done by reference publishers are going down.
In my business, the newspaper business, I realize the cost of newsprint, the cost of paper is skyrocketing like everything else. Do you see a major cost savings for your department by going to the internet as opposed to publishing on paper?
Well, there's no question about it. That it's not just the cost of the paper itself, but it's the cost of the physical delivery. Interestingly enough, the conversion of the paper, the printing of the paper, is the relatively inexpensive part of it. The most expensive part is putting the information in the hands of people through some delivery mechanism, the post office or one of the delivery services. And we see that the cost is just tremendously reduced when we're able to only publish information on the internet. And most importantly, it used to be you had to go to one of those 1,300 libraries. Now you can sit in your home or your office or your school, any public library, you can sit any place in the world and have access to that information. It's just stunning the change that's taken place.
Okay, talking about stunning, let's talk about the 2006 governor's race in the state of Nevada.
Mm-hmm.
You had some interest in higher office a few years back. Do you have any interest? Has Governor Gwynn contacted you about entering the governor's race?
I think Governor Gwynn's contacted everybody he knows. He was in Washington for the Sarah Winnemucca statue dedication, and we hosted a dinner for the artist and for the governor and his wife and some other folks. And Mrs. Gwynn sat next to me at dinner, and she was just teased me all through dinner about how she thought my wife would be such a great first lady, but she didn't really care who Nora was married to.
In truth, would you have any interest?
Well, I'm running the GPO, and I promised the president that I would take the 3 to 5 years that's necessary to transform the agency from a 19th century operation to a 21st century operation. We've made great progress. In some ways, we've made more progress than I expected. But I'm there, and I'm committed to finishing this transformation process.
Do you talk to the President on a regular basis?
Well, I had a meeting in the Oval Office 2 weeks ago. Maybe it was 3 weeks ago now, the same morning that the Premier from Vietnam was there. And that was an interesting experience in that the President is always, as you know, prompt as can be. I mean, and I'm always early when I have a meeting with him. This particular morning, he was running a little late because of the problems of translating from one language to the other. And it was kind of cute to listen to him talk about this. And it was, so my meeting was a little shorter than scheduled.
Let me just ask you this. Next time you see the President, tell him about Nevada Newsmakers. We got this satellite hookup thing we could do. We'd love to have him on the show.
Well, we will talk about that.
That would be awesome. We'll be right back on Nevada Newsmakers. Thanks for being here, Bruce.
You're welcome. Nice to see you.
For a videotape copy of any Nevada Newsmakers program, call 775-857-2244. The tapes are $20 each, including shipping.
My family started this business 27 years ago. We work hard to serve our customers and our community.
But it's getting harder and harder to keep the doors open.
For example, our workers' comp is going through the roof. Isn't anyone on my side anymore?
The Retail Association of Nevada is. If you're a small business owner, we can cut your workers' comp by up to 50%, lobby for your interests, and keep you informed. Put us to work today.
Many of the materials we rely on every day come from the ground, and modern mining technology brings them to us cleaner and safer than ever before. To learn more about America's natural resources, visit nma.org, the National Mining Association.
Reno's best dining values are all at one casino, the Pepper Mill. You can enjoy great savings on our popular specials. Pepper Mill's coffee shop offers daily lunch specials, low-carb dining, and all your favorite comfort foods. You'll find sensational lunch specials featuring Reno's freshest seafood, sushi, pasta, and more at Oceano. And early bird specials at Reno's Premier Steakhouse and Romanza Ristorante Italiano. The best values are at the Pepper Mill. Where are you dining?
Your best value in sight is here for you to see. From frames to lenses to eye exams, you're covered A to Z. Davis Optical, your best value in sight.
Davis Optical Centers, with 2 locations in Reno and Sparks.
Davis Optical, your best value in sight.
And now, back to Nevada Newsmakers with Sam Shad.
And we are joined by Barbara Scheible, who founded the PTA for Profoundly Gifted Kids. First of all, explain to us, Barbara, if you would, what are profoundly gifted kids?
Well, gifted students are usually identified by an intelligence test, like an IQ test. And so traditionally, you would consider a student gifted and talented if they score in the top 2 percentile, say, of a standardized test like that. Profoundly gifted, people have identified them differently, usually a score over 160, say, or maybe even a 145, if you're going to go specifically by scores. But basically, they represent the students at the very top end.
So like the top 0.5%?
0.5%, right.
Do you have a profoundly gifted child?
I do, yes.
How did you find that out?
Well, my children were tested and identified actually in a district that we lived in before we came to this district, and then again tested in this district.
And how did that manifest itself to you? Were you aware of it before the testing?
Definitely. I think that most parents who have gifted students and children recognize those traits when the kids are very young. It's the way the kids interact with each other, with their families.
And isn't one of the tells also that they become frustrated and bored at school when they have all of this intelligent capability, and yet it's just totally not satisfying for them. It's frustrating and difficult.
I think a lot of kids feel that way, and parents first recognize sometimes that could be a signal for parents that when these kids come home who have been happy and looking forward to going to school, they go to kindergarten and they come home and they're so disappointed they already know everything that the teacher is talking about, and that's definitely a trait.
Now, I'm on the Academic Standards Council for the state of Nevada. People know that. And we're working with No Child Left Behind and working with statewide curriculum. And one of the things that No Child does is it focuses, finally and importantly, on those children that have a very hard time learning disabled children.
Right.
Looking at the low end, you mentioned when we were off camera, that's having a real impact on those kids that are at the upper echelon, if you will.
Well, I think it is, and I think that there are many good things that have come from No Child Left Behind. What you're saying, bringing all students to proficiency is a goal that we should certainly support. What happens, though, is it shifts the national focus and the national discussion on that population. And so other students, and particularly gifted and talented students, tend to be overlooked because the realities would be, first of all, resources. So if a school is under a lot of pressure to raise proficiency scores...
Do you think there are fewer resources, fewer opportunities for classwork in the gifted and talented area?
Gifted programs are being cut around the country, district by district. Some more than others. States have cut back on funding in order to shift resources to programs that can help.
And is that true in Nevada, Vegas, and here?
I'm not as familiar with Clark County and Washoe County. At this particular last session, there have not been budget cuts to GT. 2 years ago, in 2003, they were on the chopping block, as were many programs. The session before that, we lost an entire program in Gifted and Talented called Talent Academy. The entire program was cut. So it's always a threat. Currently, though, in Washoe County, it's stabilized, and we're hoping to be able to actually increase the program.
We were both at a party recently at Jan and Bob Davidson's house where a number, I think it was 15 students, profoundly gifted, who were at UNR for a crash summer course in various things, including philosophy. It's very interesting. Just got to talk to a kid who's 14 years old about ancient philosophy, and they're having a discussion with me that is like way over my head.
I wasn't even invited to the party.
What can I tell you? I think I crashed. But the thing that surprised me was when all the kids were talking at the end, they were all talking about how great it was to be challenged, that they had this great sense of frustration in their classrooms, that they weren't challenged. And here, it was some of the most difficult work of their lives, and they were loving every minute of it.
I think that is so true of most of the students who I know, and I know a lot of them personally through our parent organization. I've got to know the kids. They are so eager to learn, and they so want to move forward, and there's a lot of frustration because in a regular classroom there's just not that same opportunity. And something else those kids particularly enjoyed was the opportunity to work together. They really enjoy the camaraderie, and they challenge each other in a setting like that, and they were eager.
Is there a high percentage of social problems with kids that are not able to be in that higher learning category?
In other words, say a gifted student in a regular classroom, perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, problems with suicide and things like that?
Anecdotally, I can say here in Washoe County, one of the high school GT facilitators who I know, she personally has known 7 high school GT students who have committed suicide during this last decade or so that she's been involved in the program, and that's a startling and scary number.
It is.
And I think that's one of the common misperceptions about gifted students is that they will make it. People say, oh, they'll be fine, they'll all make it. But some of their characteristics, I think, set them up to be particularly vulnerable to some of the social problems.
And real quickly before we end, when we were talking earlier, we were talking about how these children think differently. For example, when they want to study housing, they don't just study housing, they want to study everything about it, the architecture, the engineering, the zoning. I mean, that's what we're talking about, isn't it? That it's a different dimension that they think and work in.
And that's why it's so wonderful when they have the opportunity to work together, because that builds on it. And they just don't have that opportunity normally in a regular classroom setting, and that frustration can lead to the depression, what some of the issues you're talking about.
Right, and you've got a website where people can contact you? We'll ask you, we'll just go ahead and it'll be under the Nevada Newsmakers section of kvbc.com and krnv.com or nevadanewsmakers.com.
Great.
Very interesting. We're going to continue this discussion, not today, but in the future, and we thank you for being here.
Thank you.
We'll be right back on Nevada Newsmakers after this.
This is Nevada Newsmakers.
For more than a decade, the Southern Nevada Water Authority has been helping the community embrace conservation as a way of life. That includes replacing more than 50 million square feet of grass with water-smart landscaping. During the worst drought on record, watering restrictions and tough landscaping codes have reduced the community's water use by billions of gallons, even as thousands of new residents were moving into Nevada. That's smart water management, and that's our promise to Nevada.
When making your decision as where to play golf, consider the resort at Red Hawk. You know you have made the right choice the moment you arrive. The friendly staff welcomes you to our award-winning pro shop. You know you've made the right decision on the first tee. The Lakes course is in the best condition in years. You know you've made the right choice after you've played 18 holes. The resort at Red Hawk, the right choice.
So, who do you use for workers' comp?
Pro Group Management.
Ah, I've heard some good things about them.
You bet. Employee background checks, safety training, claim seminars. Oh, and here's the great part. If you have an issue, they work for you, not against you.
Sounds perfect. And expensive.
Well, that's the best part. They saved me 30%. I've heard they saved others 50%.
Works for me. Pro Group Management. Finally, workers' comp that works for you.
And now, back to Nevada Newsmakers with Sam Shad.
And a terrific Power Pundit panel today, as always. And don't forget, you can watch Nevada Newsmakers online now at NevadaNewsmakers.com. It's a great website. Daryl Capurro is here. He's with the Nevada Motor Transport Association. Liz MacMenamin, Director of Government Affairs for the Retail Association of Nevada, one of our proud sponsors. And Paul Mozen, healthcare consultant. Welcome to all of you.
And other things, too.
We won't even go there. All right, Daryl, let's start with you, because and as always, I'd like to point out that Jim Rogers, who's the Chancellor of the University System, is also the owner of KVBC and KRNV. And
it starts out that way when we're going to work Jim over.
Disclaimer.
Latest story coming out from Casey Howard in the Review Journal is the regents have been receiving phone calls from Robert Eidhoven, the Gibbons spokesman, asking what they think about Jim Rogers' comments about Jim Gibbons. And do you think this is helpful in this election process to have the kind of discourse we're having right now?
Sam, I really don't think so. I think some of the comments, and I respect the Chancellor in that, but I think he went a little overboard on his comments in that. And you probably are going to have some fallout from that based on the articles that I've read and from people I've talked to and that. But that's one of the charms, I guess, of Mr. Rogers is that he speaks his mind. So
or not.
You have to take that into account, I suppose, in evaluating what he said.
Not to disagree with my distinguished colleague, but, the basis of our political system is an open discourse. And if Mr. Rogers wants to say what he thinks, I think it's fine.
And do you think he truly believes that Jim Gibbons is not very smart, as he said? I'd hate to see him take his gloves off. I saw a quote yesterday saying, if this is what he's going to start the campaign on, what is it going to be like after he takes his gloves off and does decide to run?
It's going to be like that.
It's like, this is ridiculous.
Well, so what are the prospects for what the campaign will be like? Assume that 4 or 6 people are in it. Right now, it looks like that's very possible, maybe likely.
It's going to be dirty. I think it's going to be dirty. It's going to be, and each year it progressively gets dirtier and down and dirty.
Well, one of the things that strikes me, Scott, is that the more that Jim Rogers goes after Jim Gibbons, the more publicity he's actually giving to Jim Gibbons, who a lot of people in this state have not only met once or twice, but probably between Jim and Don, dozens, if not hundreds of times over the years that they've been in public service.
Well, I think the remarks were off the mark as far as the intelligence level, because the man has the credentials. Mr. Gibbons has the credentials. I don't know of a lot of people who have a law degree that are in this race who have done so many other things too. So it's just the wrong type of tactic, I think, to use. But unfortunately, as Paul mentioned, I think we're going to see more of that. I think people are really getting kind of tired of this drag people through the mud. They want to hear what you're going to do when you become governor, senator, or whatever it might be. I think we need to get back to that.
And to agree with my friend Sam, it does give him more publicity.
He's running for something.
I was going to say the same thing.
Something came over me. It gives him more publicity, And that helps him, because most people have made up their mind, I think, who they're going to vote for. I don't think that what Mr. Rogers says is really going to change anyone's mind. They're not going to go, oh, I don't think I'm going to vote for
Well, we still have a long time to go before we get to the end of this road.
I think a lot of people already know who they're thinking they're going to vote for.
Do you agree with that, Scott?
You know, I don't think that they know who they're going to vote for. But you know what really concerns me is you got K-12 education, you got whatever's going to go on with the university system. We have water resource problems. Are we going to take water out of White Pine County to continue the growth in Vegas? All of the talk about what we're going to do with federal land. The price of homes is getting to the point where we have to build high-rises to put wealthy people in, and we have to build high-rises to put our workers in Vegas. We have some phenomenal problems that have to be dealt with. And we're not giving them a chance because we're running a personality contest for governor, and it's wrong.
I worry about how our kids are going to be able to afford housing, and that because in the current circumstances, I don't think they can. And that's, you know, to force our own children who are natives of Nevada to go elsewhere, you know, that kind of bothers me. But that's part of the problems that we experience because of the huge growth factor that we are experiencing both north and south.
Well, I think those are some of the issues that will make or break a candidate during this upcoming election. I really do. The housing issue is a big one. And high-rises, this is a huge thing going on in southern Nevada right now. There are a lot of them on the slate right now to be built.
150 projects.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Is this going to continue?
And you know they're not going to build them if they don't think they can sell them.
All right, so let's go around the panel one at a time here. Daryl, do you think that this election is going to be about the very real issues that have been just brought up, or do you think it's going to be a lot of mudslinging and tearing down?
No, I think there's going to be some of that, the mudslinging end of it, but I think what these people are going to find out in the polling is that that's not what people want to hear. They want to hear how they're going to deal with taxes, how they're going to deal with housing, water, Yucca Mountain, and other issues in that. So I would suspect that the candidates, assuming that they're smart enough to see that, will concentrate on giving their views of what's going to happen. I do happen to agree with Paul on one point. I think there are less undecideds at this point in time than there have been in some past elections. In other words, you might have 30% are undecided at this point. I think it's only about 15 at this point.
Just very quickly, Liz.
Okay, the smart candidate will work on the issues. The other candidates will take a personal attack campaign. That's the only campaign that they'll have.
Okay, and that's where we're out of time. We'll be right back on Nevada Newsmakers.
I agree.
Nevada Newsmakers, brought to you in part by the Tahoe Reno Industrial Center, the world's largest industrial park, the resort at Red Hawk, and the Peppermill family of casinos.
Here at the Tahoe Reno Industrial Center, water resources come from fresh, clean groundwater, approved by state permits. The water is pumped from wells to million-gallon storage tanks and then distributed to TRI companies. Another amenity is our investment in a state-of-the-art wastewater treatment plant. This disposal system converts waste to clean water for industrial applications. Welcome to the Tahoe Reno Industrial Center, the largest industrial park in the world, building economic prosperity for Nevada.
Don't forget, you can watch Nevada Newsmakers online at nevadanewsmakers.com.
We have Bob Fisher talking about freedom of the press tomorrow. It's a hot show.
We'll see you then. Take care.